Hi, today we are going to talk about 5 steps to break a bad habit. I think steps 2 and 4 are going to surprise you. Either way, all of the steps are simple, helpful, and easy to implement. Let's get right into it. Now, in order to do this properly, we have to do a quick review of the anatomy of a habit. When I work with my clients, a habit has 4 components. The first is the cue, or the thing in your external reality that triggers the rest of this chain of events. Then the second thing is an emotion. So you're cued, an emotion happens, which then leads to a behavior, which then leads to a reward. All 4 of those components are going to help you as you are forming new habits and breaking old ones. So this video is inspired by a reopened wound. I am freshly aware about a breakup that I had a few months ago. I would like to move on from the fixation part of it. I'm not necessarily saying that the emotions are going to go away. I'm ready to create something new, and this is the process that I've been using to help me move past this. And in general, it's the process that I use to break a bad habit. All right, let's get into the framework. Step 1, become aware of your cues. You need to understand what in your environment and your external reality is kicking off this chain of events. What is happening around you that leads you into this behavior that you no longer want to do? Having an awareness of the cues is really valuable because we're going to be utilizing those cues to create a new behavior, create a new habit. Step 2, this is the one I think is you're not gonna like. Identify the value you get from this behavior, or said another way, identify what need is being met by fulfilling this behavior, by doing this habit. Yeah. So that's more than just the reward. What is it that the reward gives to you? The reason why I know that there is some value that you get from doing this behavior is because ultimately, we're still mammals, okay? Shout out to a prefrontal cortex. But what is true about every sentient creature on this planet is that we are wired for survival. At some point when you were developing this habit, or at some point when you got triggered or cued by something and the emotional response it elicited came up, you chose to do this behavior because you thought it would help you to survive. Even the things that aren't that deep, like eating candy, there is some piece of it, some piece of the reward that you get from that, or some aspect of the emotion that you were trying to process that said, doing this behavior is going to contribute positively to us surviving. It's going to make surviving feel easier, or it's going to literally help me to survive. And I promise you, it doesn't matter how not deep you think this thing is, there is some aspect of you that feels like the behavior you're currently doing is helping you to survive. I'm done yelling at you, but I need you to really understand that we're wired for survival, and so the behaviors that you're doing, they are serving a purpose, or at the time when you developed it, it served a purpose, and so you are getting value out of it, even if it's not something you like right now. I'm actually done this time. So figure out what value you're getting out of this habit. Some examples of the value that you can get out of a bad habit. It can be some kind of emotional release. Pain management or pain relief is something valuable. It can be an identity that feels good. It might just be a sense of completion. For example, I tend to eat something sweet at the end of every meal because it gives me a sense of completion. It gives me a sense that I did all the food groups. That being said, I'm not eating processed sugar all the time. More often than not, I'm eating a fruit as my treat. And something that is really important about this that I want you to understand is that when you figure out what value you're getting from the current habit, I need you to look at it without judgment. Because you need to remember whatever the current behavior is, it's something that is coming from a place of wanting to help you. It wants to help you. So in my example, with re-romanticizing a dead relationship, my brain is trying to help me process the pain of ending that relationship. Now, I don't like the way that my brain has chosen to do that because I know that it's coming from a place of love, of trying to help me. I am a lot less judgmental about the fact that this habit even exists for me at this time. So I need you to keep that in mind. You're getting some kind of value out of this habit, and the reason that it exists is because at some point you or your brain or your body or the adults who raised you thought that it would be helpful for you to do this thing. I know I sound angry. I'm not angry with you. I'm just really passionate about how much we need to give ourselves compassion for doing things that literally contribute or that feel like they contribute to our survival. We really got to give ourselves some grace because we're just doing the best that we can. Step 3, now that you've identified the value you get from this behavior, list out at least 30 other ways that you can get to that value. And keep this in mind, they don't have to be good ideas. They do not have to be good ideas. There are 2 reasons why this is very important. The first is that it shows you externally, it gives you the opportunity to see that there are many ways, I would argue infinite ways, to get to the specific value that you have identified. And when you see that there are many ways to get there, if you open up the possibilities for yourself in order to satiate whatever the need is. The second reason that it's useful is because it's a good exercise with brainstorming. It makes sure that you don't try to fixate on some kind of perfect solution. The reason why I ask for 30 specifically is because it seems like kind of a lot, but it should, because there are a lot of options for you to get that need fulfilled. Step 4, decide what you want to put in this space. So with breaking a bad habit, the way that I'm currently talking about it is not necessarily attempting to change the cues, not necessarily trying to switch the emotion that is associated with those cues, but instead taking out that behavior piece and swapping it with something that you find more valuable or more useful. Deciding what action you're going to take in place of the current behavior is step 4. It's actually pretty simple. But I would also invite you to think about the emotional layer of this. Like, what is it that you're trying to create in your life instead? And which of the behaviors that you listed out in step 3 are going to bring you closer and closer to your ideal version of yourself? So that's step 4. Choose the behavior or the action that you want to do instead of what you're currently doing. And while I am all about the menu method in general, where you give yourself a variety of options to choose from, I do think that in the first month or so that you're practicing this new habit, you should just choose one replacement behavior and try and implement that as much as possible. Step 5 is to implement and reinforce the new behavior. Implement with compassion. This is going to be probably the slowest going part, because what you really need to do is develop an awareness of almost each individual part of this habit. Because right now, especially in my example, the behavior that I'm referring to is actually just a thought pattern. And it's not something that's conscious. It's happening almost instantaneously. And so the thing about implementing and reinforcing is that you need to take the time and have the patience and compassion with yourself. Initially, what you're gonna find is that you move so quickly from cue to behavior, you don't even realize you're in the middle of this habit until you're halfway through it. So what's gonna happen is, as soon as you do recognize, oh, I'm doing the behavior, you stop and you add in that replacement behavior you chose in step 4. Eventually, with time, again, patience and grace, you are going to catch yourself quicker and quicker until you catch yourself right before you do the habit, and you can switch the behavior. Or you recognize, oh, I'm having that emotional response to this cue. Let me shift my attention in the direction that I want it to go, or ensuring that the actions are aligned with my ideal vision of myself. And just a reminder that healing and changing, evolving as a person is not linear. So you're gonna have days where you wake up and you don't do the bad habit, but then the next day you might go through an entire cycle before you even recognize that you did your old habit. The process of implementing and reinforcing, it's not going to be a straight line. It's going to be a very interesting, probably spiral with some like spikes like this, but eventually you will develop the new habit, and that will feel more automatic. That'll feel more natural to you than the old habit that you're trying to break. So if I take you through my example habit, what we have is the cue is anytime I see two people engaged in any sort of tender interaction, the emotional response that is elicited is, oh no. And then the behavior that occurs is just fixation, reliving conversations. That is the behavior. Step 2, identify the value I get from this habit or the need that is being met. And the reward that I get from that is like a temporary pain relief, like a sort of fake working bag type of oxytocin. So that's the need being met. A value also that I get out of it is I still get this sense of like being a part of a team, which is very valuable to me. Number 3, list out 30 ways that I can get that need met. Things that came to mind is in diving, I get a good sense of teamwork because even though it's an individual sport, people are always really helpful in giving feedback. Helping my sister with her kids is another way to like bond and also literally hang out with people who love me. It scratches the same itch. Step 4, decide what I want to replace it with. So right now the behavior is fixation. Behaviors that I've chosen to replace this with primarily is I will reach out to friends. So I'll either be texting or try to get on the phone with someone. If that is not a possibility, then my next best option is to listen to a podcast, like a conversational podcast. And then step 5, implement and reinforce. All I can do is just, as soon as I catch myself in that pattern of thought, just take a deep breath and shift the direction of my attention. That's all that you can really do. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments, what habit are you trying to break? I'll see you next time. Bye. Who else is going through a breakup? Who else is having a dry January, but not in the alcohol way? Just me?